Finally, my 2025 Appalachian Trail post-hike gear review. Hey everybody, today I'm going to be going over the equipment and the clothing that I used during my 2025 Appalachian Trail Thru-Hike. We're going to start with the backpacks. First backpack I used was from Z-Packs. It was the Arcall 50 liter. Early on in my hike, one of the carbon stays in my backpack snapped. I hadn't dropped the pack, I hadn't fallen. In my opinion, it was just a defect in the manufacturing. Overall, I was very happy with that pack. It was very lightweight, it was water resistant, and I was very disappointed when that happened. Contacted customer service from Z-Packs. They were wonderful to deal with, and I got a full refund. Unfortunately, when I went to the outfitters, they didn't sell Z-Packs. So I ended up with my second pack, the ULA Circuit 50 liter. One of the issues that I had with this pack was that the side pockets, which you store water and gear in, were so tight to the backpack that I was unable to get my hands in it and reach back to grab water, to grab equipment out of there. And I thought that was very inconvenient, particularly because I was storing my water filter and my spare liters of water in the side pockets. Also, this backpack wasn't as water resistant as it was advertised. I found that during rain, persistent rain during the day or a heavy rain, that I would have water inside the pack. Now my gear didn't get wet because I had my gear inside waterproof bags inside the backpack. But I just felt that it wasn't as water resistant as it was advertised to be. So I ended up switching out to the final backpack that I used, which was the Hyperlight Unbound 55 liter. I bought this backpack when I got to Massachusetts, and I used it for the rest of my hike. This pack was outstanding, performed very well. The large side pockets made it really easy for me to reach in to get my filter, to get my equipment, to get my spare water bottles. And the water penetration just did not happen with this pack. It was highly water resistant as it's advertised, and it was highly water resistant. It was probably the biggest used pack I saw on trail this year. I did see some ULAs, I did see some Z-Packs, but the majority of people that I felt were using a Hyperlight. The tent that I started out with was the Durston X-Mid Pro 2, the two-person tent. I love this tent, but the footprint was a little bit big, and although that wasn't a problem per se, when Sarah got off trail in Damascus, I ended up switching to her tent, which was the Z-Packs Duplex. The Duplex performed exceptionally well. This tent is bulletproof. The footprint is smaller than my Durston, and it's also a lighter tent. Next I'm going to talk about my sleep systems. The winter bag that I used was the Disco 15 Endless Promise Down sleeping bag. It performed well, and I didn't have any issues with it. Eventually, I ended up switching to the Enlightened Equipment 40-degree quilt, which I have stored in the bag. That as well performed extremely well, and I didn't have any issues with it. Sleeping bag that I used was the Nemo Tensor Extreme. It's a little bit heavier than some of the summer weight sleeping pads that I have, but I loved it. It was durable, super comfortable. It has an R value of 8, which I didn't need during the summer months, but I just really love this pad, so I kept it. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the clothing that I wore on the trail. The first layer of clothing I wore was a Berger mesh t-shirt. It's a wool t-shirt. Did a really good job moving sweat away from my body into the next layer. Definitely kept me warmer and drier, no complaints. The next layer I wore was a pack of wool hooded sun shirt. It was warmer, it was a little bit heavier weight. Loved that, it worked really well. Continued to wear that until it was just too warm. And then I ended up switching to a sun hoodie, a synthetic sun hoodie from Hardware. I'll put a link below with the my lighter pack so that you can actually look at the names of everything that I did wear. The layer that I wore above the pack of hoodie was a quarter zip cool KUHL pullover. That was a fleece pullover. And then the final layer of clothing I would wear during the winter months was a Patagonia 3-layered toured raincoat. This thing was great. Of course, and I would switch out depending on the weather that day and depending how warm I was getting during the hike. I could switch out layers and strip myself down from some of them. On my legs, if it was cold, I wore a pair of Nike winter weight running tights. And over those tights, I wore a pair of Patagonia shorts with pockets that zipped. Wanted to get pockets that zipped so I could store stuff in them without worrying about losing them. These shorts were great. I wore them throughout the entire through hike. They never failed me. They never ripped. Highly recommend these. I did bring a second pair of tights. These are an REI heavyweight merino wool tight. And I basically wore these to wear at night when I got into camp. And if it was a super cold day, I could wear them during the day, but mostly I wore them at night. And over those tights, I would wear the shorts. And then if it was extreme weather, I would wear my REI rain pants over all of that. The rain pants worked great. I would recommend buying rain pants that have zippered legs on them. This makes it easier to take them on, to put them on and take them off. Also, you can use it, these particular REI ones actually unzip all the way up to your hip. So you can actually use them for ventilation as well. So on the worst of days, I would wear all this and it kept me warm down into the teens, wind, sleet, whatever. On my head, I wore a pack of wool beanie. Awesome, kept me nice and warm. And I also wore a merino wool buff. It's amazing how much difference wearing a buff makes in terms of keeping you warm. Keeps the wind and the weather off your neck, makes you feel nice. And on the days I didn't wear the winter cap, my baseball cap was a Melon water-resistant, waterproof baseball cap. I wore this for quite a bit of time on the hike, but I found that when I was going through the areas where there was a lot of blowdowns, that this blocked my peripheral vision, and I actually bumped my head on 3 separate occasions on blowdowns. The last time it knocked me on my ass, so I got up from that, and I started wearing the hat backwards, and eventually I would switch out to wearing a bandana. I went through a total of, I believe, 5 pairs of shoes. It's probably the biggest mistake I made. I'm probably going to do a separate video just on the shoes. But I ended up finishing the trail with a pair of Hokas. I finally figured out the proper size for me, and I didn't have any issues with blisters at the end. I was plagued with issues with blisters, heel blisters, and reflecting back on the hike, it was in large part due to the sizing of my shoes. I got some advice which I followed about 100 miles into the trail, and it just didn't work for me. But again, I think I'll do a separate video on the footwear. As far as cookware goes, I started out with your basic cooking pot, a Soto 750, and my stove was an MSR with the igniter. The stove performed very well. At some point, I switched the pots, and I purchased this pot here, which is Sea to Summit cooking pot. This allowed me to cook bigger meals like spaghetti when I was unable to buy dehydrated meals. I found that when I was on trail, when I was down south, it was easier to find dehydrated meals in the grocery stores. But as I continued up the trail north, it got harder and harder. And it wasn't always a Walmart that you could go to. Not even all the Walmarts had them, but generally if you went to the outdoors section in the Walmarts, you could find some Mountain House meals. So this was a game changer for me because it allowed me to just cook bigger meals. I enjoyed making my oatmeal and putting it in this big pot every morning and eating up my oatmeal. My food bag is a custom printed bag from Hilltop Packs. I ordered the bag with a flat bottom, which I would recommend so it stays upright and doesn't just fall down on you. The food bag from Hilltops are waterproof, they're high quality. I had zero problems with it. I was actually recently invited by Hilltops to join their affiliate program, which I did. And I'll leave a link below. If you want to purchase one of their bags, you can use a code and receive a 10% discount. I'd recommend getting a custom pack food bag made up because you want to be able to easily differentiate it from everyone else's bags. One thing when you're hanging it in a tree by itself, but when you're putting it in the bear boxes, sometimes you go to the bear box and there's 7, 8, 9 bear bags in there. You want to be able to easily recognize yours and hope nobody accidentally takes yours. My water filtration system, I use the Ketadine B-Free. It works very well. It had a good flow rate and was easy to clean. This summer was very dry on trail, and although I had a smart liter bottle that I could fill with the B-Free, I found that sometimes it wasn't enough. And I noticed many other hikers using a CNOC or SNOC bag with a Sawyer filter. The larger CNOC bag allowed people to carry more water, which became very important at times this year on the trail. There were drought conditions by the time we got to New Hampshire and Maine, and it would have been nice to have a bigger bag. So I think if I had to do it again, I would use the CNOC with the Sawyer, and maybe bring this too. I'm not sure, but I would definitely bring something where I could carry more water. I don't have my chargers here with me at the moment, but I used a couple different chargers during the hike. I started with an Anchor Nano power bank, 30 watt, 10,000 amp. I found that at 10,000 milliamps, I found that it wasn't enough for me, so I ended up switching to an older Anchor that I had, which I believe was a 20,000 milliamp charger. I used a Nightcore headlamp. That worked really well. No problems with that. That thing is great. And I did carry a Garmin InReach, which I still have on my pack. And fortunately, I didn't have to use the SOS feature on that, which was really the sole reason that I carried it. I didn't use it for navigating. I didn't use it so that family or friends could track my location as I hiked. I did use a flex tail to blow up my sleep pad. This thing works really well, but I did have to replace mine. I believe I ended up taking my sister Michelle's at some point. I think when she got off trail, or I may have even grabbed Sarah's at some point. When I was hiking in New Hampshire, that second blower that I had failed, and a fellow hiker of mine, friend of mine, Freebird, took it apart and he found a small piece of debris was clogging the internal fan. And that's probably what happened to the first blower I had. I think it's something that just needs to be addressed in the design of it, because if you drop this in the dirt and just a little piece of debris gets into that fan, it'll stop working. At some point during the hike, I did have Sarah, she either brought it to me in Harper's Ferry or she sent it to me. I think she brought it with her to Harper's Ferry. She brought me an umbrella, so I used the Z-Packs umbrella. I only used it a few times. I carried it with me till the end. Super light. But honestly, we didn't get a lot of rain on trail, particularly when it got to be the summer months. So I only used it on a few occasions. I started the trail with a pair of rain mitts, mostly for the winter months. I found that the pair that I started with, which I can't even remember the name of them, but they'll be listed in my lighter pack link, they wetted out within 20 minutes. So when Sarah got off trail in Damascus, she gave me her Black Diamond rain mitts. And these things were great. I mean, they lasted at least an hour to an hour and a half before they started slightly wetting out. So I would recommend these. Forgot to talk about my puffy coat. My puffy coat is Enlightened Equipment. Had this thing for a number of years since I did the long trail in 2021. This is my emergency, stay warm, wore it almost every night at camp hoodie. You know, I protect this. I keep it in a waterproof bag with my sleep gear, and it just does not come out unless I'm at camp. I've got my dry clothes on, and then I'll put this on. I did see some people hiking with their puffies on. It's just not something I ever wanted to sweat in or get wet. It's kind of, again, an important piece of equipment to keep dry, in my opinion, keep in your pack until you really get to camp and you want to stay warm. Just a couple more things. The sit pad I use this all the time. It was just literally, I think, $15 on Amazon, inexpensive. I would use this outside my tent as like as a mat to stand on when I got in and out of my tent. I would use it during lunch breaks to take a seat on a rock. Works great, doesn't take up any space. For my poop kit, I just use a standard trowel and a bag with some TP and some hand sanitizer. I did use some of the compressed discs that you just add water to and then they expand. Those are really useful when you wanted to clean yourself up, maybe take a little bit of a bath at the tent or the shelter to kind of clean up. Those worked out really well. Standard first aid kit. Again, I got these from Hilltops, the packs. And I had my basic bandages in here, my ibuprofen, and some blister patches. Basic first aid stuff. Some miscellaneous things that I may have forgotten to talk about. The pillow that I used here is just an inflatable Nemo pillow, Filio Elite. Worked great, no complaints. It's kind of got a soft outer cloth on it, which was nice. No problems with that. I do plan on doing more videos on various different topics related to my experience through hiking the trail this year. Hopefully it helps people who are preparing for next year, or just helping people that are planning on going out on trail and doing section hikes. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Continue to watch the channel. I appreciate you all very much. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.